I changed into a suit, and Uncle Hua took a tie and tied it for me. He patted me on the back and smiled and said, "The young man is so handsome as your father." His eyes were full of his father's love. I smiled at Uncle Hua. In fact, I don't like to wear suits, because I'm not used to wearing such formal clothes. But for the sake of that idiot, it's okay for me to put up with it. After waiting for 2 minutes, Mr. Luo knocked on the door from outside and walked out. "Brother Ro." I smiled and shouted to Mr. Luo. "Xiao Yuan, you're really handsome in this suit." Mr. Luo looked at me and said to me with a compliment, "Brother Luo, when did you learn to praise people?" I have always had a good relationship with Mr. Luo, and we like to joke with each other. "You kid." Mr. Luo smiled bitterly, then turned his head to Uncle Hua and said respectfully, "Boss, the people from Haidong Company have arrived." Uncle Hua nodded. "You go with Xiao Yuan, this matter is up to Xiao Yuan, you can accompany him." On the way, Brother Luo told me that we should go to the conference room on the 3rd floor and wait for them, and then I would take care of the rest. I nodded. Anyway, I don't really want to negotiate this business with Haidong Company this time, so I don't have to worry about what professional terms need to be said for a while. And Brother Luo is still next to me, and with him in business, I just need to fix that idiot. "Director Zhao, you will regret what you said in the morning in a while." Brother Luo and I sat in the conference room, waiting for Haidong's people to come in. After waiting for a few minutes, Director Zhao's stupid guy walked in with 2 other people I didn't know. And Brother Luo and I both stood up. But when Director Zhao saw me, the smile on his face immediately stopped, and he said almost casually, "Why are you here, the driver?" When Brother Luo saw him say that I was the driver, he immediately frowned and said, "He is the young son of our China Resources Company, and he is also responsible for talking to you about this business." When Director Zhao heard Brother Luo say that I was the young son of Haidong Company, his face immediately changed, and his face immediately turned a little red. It was like a slap that slapped him directly in the face, and his face must be hot and painful now. A person next to him directly pushed him with a gloomy face, and he immediately said to me with a smile, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were the young son of China Resources, and I hope you can Haihan don't worry about a little person like me if you offended before." I smiled at him, the sweat on his forehead oozing straight from his forehead, and he was very nervous. "Let me introduce myself. I am Luo Gaoxin, Vice President of the Marketing Department of China Resources Company. This is Zhang Yuan, the young son of our China Resources Company. This time, the boss of the business has given him full authority to talk to you." Brother Luo said to them. Director Zhao was stunned and didn't react immediately. And a man with glasses next to him hurriedly said, "Young boy, Mr. Luo, hello. I am Li Qingqing, the director of the planning department of Haidong Company. This is Zhao Huaben, the director of the sales department, and the other is Xiao Yan, the marketing officer in charge of this business. This time, the 3 of us will represent Haidong Company to discuss this cooperation business with you China Resources." Brother Luo waved his hand and invited them all to sit down. When the 3 of them sat down in the chairs, Director Li smiled and said to us, "Young boy, Mr. Luo, about the details of this business." "Wait a minute, I want to say something extra before I talk about this business." I interrupted him and spoke. Instead of getting angry at me for interrupting him, he smiled and asked me to speak first. And Director Zhao stared at me tightly. I ignored him and said directly, "I want to ask you a question. Can the director of your Haidong Company fire the following employees at will?" Director Li was stunned for a moment, and then asked me puzzled, "I don't know why the young man said this?" I looked at Director Zhao with a frightened face and said, "A friend of mine has been working in your Haidong Company before, but because of the threat of Director Zhao, he was forced to resign this morning. And the reason he did it was because he showed love to that friend of mine and was rejected by my friend. Then he threatened my friend and said that if my friend didn't agree to his show of affection, he would find a way to fire my friend's squid, and my friend couldn't stand it, so he handed in his resignation report this morning. If your company has this style of doing things, then I don't think we need to cooperate with your company in any business. Because there are such people in your company, I don't worry about China Resources cooperating with you. Young boy, listen to my explanation." "Don't worry, I'm not done yet." I looked at Director Zhao, who was eager, and continued with a gloomy face, "Also, he has always thought that I am my Uncle Hua's driver before, and he has always sneered at me, saying that he is the director, and how big the gap between me, the dick driver, is and him. Then I'll ask you now, is there a big gap between you, the director, and what I am doing now? I slammed the table and said directly to Director Zhao angrily. He was so frightened that he almost fell out of his chair. Brother Luo heard that Director Zhao had humiliated me before, and immediately said to him in a cold voice, "What qualifications do you have to look down on our young son of China Resources? Your Haidong company must give us China Resources an explanation for this matter, otherwise not to mention that this business cooperation will not be possible, and our China Resources will cut off all business contacts with Haidong in the future." Mr. Luo, don't. As soon as Director Li heard that our China Resources was going to break off all business dealings with them in Haidong, he immediately stood up anxiously. "Mr. Luo, please dissipate your anger." What the young boy just said didn't know anything about Haidong before. After he finished speaking, he glared at Director Zhao, who was not speaking next to him, and then continued to smile and said to me, "Young boy, our director of Haidong does not have the right to dismiss the employees below at will. You can rest assured that I will definitely report it to the company when I go back and make him pay for what he did. Here, I apologize to you for Haidong Company and the young man, I'm sorry." As he spoke, he bent down to apologize to me. I have to say that this Director Li is really good at being a person, can bend and stretch, but he is also a talent. I don't know how much better than Director Zhao, a fool. Don't you apologize to the young man and Mr. Luo. He jerked Director Zhao, who was shrugging his head next to him, and shouted at him angrily. Director Zhao hurriedly stood up and bent down and said to me, "Young boy, I apologize to you for what I said before. Please don't care about the villains, and don't worry about us little people." Seeing him like this, I sneered twice. "Don't, you're the big director, how can you apologize to a little driver like me? Isn't this an insult to your status as a big director? Don't apologize to me, a little driver like me can't stand it." After saying to him, I said to Director Li again, "Director Li, if you Haidong sincerely want to cooperate with our China Resources, then it is best not to let people like Director Zhao continue to work in your company. Also, this business was made by my friend who worked hard to get Uncle Hua to change his mind. If you want to talk about it, let my friend talk about it himself. None of the others could. By the way, Director Li, there is one more thing I want to tell you, don't tell my friends about me." When I finished speaking, Director Zhao sat down on the chair decadently, and it is estimated that he also knew that I deliberately wanted to fix him this time, and he must have known that his position as director in Haidong was not guaranteed, so he didn't ask me to let him go. Glancing at Director Zhao, who was sitting in the chair like a dead dog, I didn't say a word, and walked out with a gloomy face. Brother Luo also followed me out of it. He is not a man who deserves my sympathy. I wouldn't sympathize with people like him. After all, if he hadn't gone too far this time, I wouldn't have done this to him. A man like him, who thinks he is high and pretentious, deserves this. He is to blame for all this and does not deserve sympathy. I went back to Uncle Hua's office, took off my suit, took a glass of water, and sat on the sofa to drink. Uncle Hua looked at me with a smile and asked, "Have you succeeded in getting to that director?" I nodded. "Xiao Yuan, you are usually too low-key, and you tell others everywhere that you are my driver, so you will be looked down upon by others. It's good to be low-key, but it's not good to be too low-key, which makes it easy for others to think you're a bully." Uncle Hua admonished me. "No, sometimes I don't understand, what's wrong with me saying I'm a driver? Should the driver be looked down upon by others, and the driver should be ridiculed by others? Maybe this is the atmosphere of this society, laughing at the poor and not laughing at the prostitute. Others only care about whether you have money or social status, and they don't care if you work hard, let alone whether you are conscientious in your career. After all, this is the age of money, and those who have money and status are the bosses and the upper echelons of society. And those who work hard in the lower strata are the objects of their contempt and ridicule. Perhaps only in this way can they bring out their lofty and satisfy their vanity. It's a dog day." After chatting with Uncle Hua for a while, Musia called me, and she happily told me on the phone that Haidong had called her and asked her to continue to work. Although I knew about it for a long time, and I was the one who helped me succeed. But when I heard Musia so happy on the phone, I was quite happy for her. After a few words with her, I smiled and hung up. "Did that friend of yours call?" Uncle Hua asked me with a faint smile. I nodded. Xiao Yuan, it's not your uncle urging you, you're not too young, it's time to find a girlfriend. That girl uncle has seen it before, she is generous and beautiful, which is very good. If you really like her, Uncle Na supports you to be together. Uncle Hua said to me. The love urging of the previous generation to the next generation is already the norm in society, and sometimes we are not in a hurry, and they start to be in a hurry. But they are also for our own good, and they hope that we can build a family soon. Uncle, I remember. I'm going to pick her up to work in Haidong Company, so I'll leave first. I really took Uncle Hua's words to heart. Maybe I really like Musia, because I really feel very happy with her in the past 2 days. I've never been in a relationship before, and I'm a complete emotional idiot when it comes to love. So I don't know if it's like to be in love. But I really want to be with Musia now, but I don't know if Musia will like me too. Walking out of China Resources, I drove towards where Musia lived. When I was almost outside the community, I saw that Musia was already standing outside the community and waiting. She was wearing a long white dress, slightly curly pale yellow hair draped over her shoulders, a pair of black high-soled sandals on her white and tender feet, and she stood there with a gray bag in her right hand. At this time, she really looks like an angel who does not eat fireworks in the world, beautiful, but free from the mortal. I parked the car in front of her, looked at her and subconsciously said, "You're so beautiful." When she saw me praising her like this, a faint flush crept up on her pretty face, and she nodded slightly shyly. I opened the door for her, and she lifted her leg up and sat in the passenger seat. I couldn't help but peek at her twice, and then started the car and drove towards Haidong Company. Zhang Yuan, do you know? On the phone, Haidong Company not only apologized to me and let me continue to go back to work, but also said that Director Zhao was fired from the company. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Musia at me. Silly Nizi, of course I'm helping you in the back. I smiled and said to her, "You don't know, how could I possibly know? But it's okay for a fool like Director Zhao to be fired from your company. In this way, you can continue to work in Haidong Company with peace of mind, and there will be no fool like him who will harass you in the future." Musia nodded, "That's right. In the past, when he was in Haidong, he harassed me every day, so that I couldn't work properly. It's also a good thing for me that he's gone now. By the way, there is one more thing I almost forgot to tell you. Do you remember Qin Ranxue? She organized a college reunion tonight and invited me. I thought since you're here, why don't you come with me tonight to meet your old classmates? Qin Ranxue. How could I have forgotten this name? When she was in college, she was Musia's roommate and Musia's best friend. At that time, after the secret of my love for Musia was known to the whole class, she also humiliated me. At first, I even thought that Musia's sudden lack of talking to me had a lot to do with her. Because she is a rich girl, and her father also runs a company, she has always looked down on me. In the 4 years of college, she talked to me twice. The first time was when my diary was published by Qin Fei Gung in the class. She came to tell me that I should not be a toad and want to eat swan meat. Musia would definitely not be with the son of a drug dealer like me, so I dispelled the idea of chasing Musia. The second time was when I graduated. I was eating at the same table with her, and she stood up and told me that she didn't want to eat with a poor dick like me, it would make her lose her appetite. Then she changed seats with the other boy in the class and went to another table. I don't have a good impression of Qin Ranxue, because I have always disliked the kind of people who look down on others. And what my former classmates were like, I had already seen at Chao Genoa's wedding. I don't have any classmates for them, and they are just strangers to me. I wanted to refuse, but this was Musia's initiative to invite me, and if I refused her directly, she might be angry. After hesitating for a moment, in order not to spoil her interest, I nodded and said that I would go too. Musia immediately became even happier. Looking at her pretty face full of smiles, I felt quite happy in my heart. Maybe for me, being able to make the people I like happy is the happiest thing. Parking the car outside the Haidong Company, Musia smiled and said thank you to me, opened the car door and walked into the Haidong Company. Looking at Musia's back, I suddenly felt a little in a trance, and I unilaterally thought that it would be really good if I could be with her for the rest of my life. I turned around and was just about to go home, when I saw my old classmate, Tao Yanyan. Yan Yan. I stopped the car and shouted at her. She turned her head and looked at me. Zhang Yuan, why are you here? I pulled the car door and got out of the car and walked over to her. Come here and do something. Are you here to apply for a job in Haidong? I asked her, looking at the resume she was holding in her hand. Her eyes immediately darkened, and she said to me with a wry smile, that's right. But people didn't look down on me, and I was rejected by Haidong. Why did they reject you? I remember you didn't do very well in school, and you had so many certificates before. I asked her, confused. She sighed and said, what's the use of those, now the company is applying for jobs that either pay attention to relationships or look at faces. They don't care how good your grades were in college, and they don't care how many certificates you've had. My examiner said that I was dressed too ordinarily and too shyly, and I didn't look like a young woman in the city at all, so I was rejected outright. Well, this Haidong company is recruiting employees, or choosing a wife. This ordinary dress is also rejected? It doesn't have much conflict with what you wear, right? Haidong's way of recruiting employees is really a bit strange. I smiled helplessly, that's just that they don't have eyes, in fact, you're pretty and beautiful, really. Since they don't want you, then you can go to China Resources. I heard that China Resources is recruiting talents recently, you can try. I really want to help Tao Yanyan once. After all, she was my only friend in college, and she used to be nice to me. And she's also a very capable person, which I know very well. If she comes to work at China Resources, it will definitely create a lot of income for China Resources, and I believe she has the ability. China Resources is a big company like Haidong. Zhang Yuan, do you think I can do it? Tao Yanyan asked with an unconfident look at me. How do you know if you don't try? And you have to believe that you have that ability, be confident. I think you can do it. I said to her encouragingly. She exhaled and said to me, since you believe in me so much, then I'll try. If it doesn't work, I'll find it again. Tao Yanyan is a girl who is too unconfident, perhaps influenced by her father. In fact, I was very unconfident in myself like her before, but after following Uncle Hua, my inferiority complex was slowly changed. Although I am very low-key, I have no inferiority complex anymore, and I no longer look down on myself. On the contrary, I have become very confident and have a much stronger personality. And what Tao Yanyan is missing now is a process that can make her change from inferiority to self-confidence. I believe that day will not be too far away from her, and I look forward to the day when she will change from an ugly duckling to a black swan. That's it, I'm going back to China Resources to pick up my boss anyway. I'll send you to apply. I said to her. She nodded, I'm sorry for you, Zhang Yuan. When she got in the car, I drove towards China Resources. What I didn't expect was that it was my help this time that made me a real estate tycoon in the end. It can also be said to be a creation to make people. Parking the car outside China Resources, I asked Tao Yanyan to go in first. I still have some things to do, so I won't go in with her. She nodded, thanked me again, and then got out of the car and walked towards China Resources in front. You have to believe in yourself, you can. I sat in the car and cheered her on. She turned to me and smiled at me, then plucked up the courage to continue walking towards China Resources. In fact, I didn't go in with her, not because I wanted to do anything, but because I didn't want her to know in advance that China Resources was an industry under my name. Because if she knows that I helped her get a job at China Resources, it will not be good for her to build up her self-confidence. After she went in for a few minutes, I got out of the car and walked towards the inside of China Resources. Arriving at the door of the recruiting office, I knocked on the door and walked inside. Xiao Yuan, you know that you have time to come here. Sister Fan, the director of recruitment, stood up and said to me with a smile. I smiled at her and said, Sister Fan, are we still recruiting people from China Resources recently? Why did you suddenly ask my sister this? Our China Resources has stopped accepting people recently. People in all sectors are also saturated. That's right. I hesitated for a moment and then said, Sister Fan, can you do me a favor? An old classmate of mine wants to apply for a job at our China Resources, can you arrange it for her? Sister Fan stared at me with a wicked smile. Xiao Yuan, you honestly tell my sister if the classmate you are talking about is your little girlfriend? Embarrassed, why do they all ask if it's my girlfriend when I talk about my classmates? Do I have so many girlfriends? I'm still single, right? Sister, she's really just my classmate. She used to be very nice to me when I was in school, but now that she can't find a job, I want to help her once, don't think about it. And my classmate is very capable, he used to have a very good academic performance in school, and he also won many awards. Sister, can you help me once? In order to make Tao Yanyan successfully apply, I also sacrificed. Xiao Yuan, what you said. You've begged my sister here, can my sister help you? Where is that classmate of yours now? Show me her resume first, and then I'll arrange for her to go to the sales department to train her first. Sister Fan said. Seeing that Sister Fan agreed, I was also relieved in my heart. After all, I know that Sister Fan is usually a person who doesn't talk about relationships, but now she is violating the principle she has always adhered to and using her right to arrange work for Tao Yanyan, which is all for my sake. I hurriedly said to Sister Fan, she may be waiting in the application room right now. Okay, then I'll go and see. Xiao Yuan, this time it's all about your face. The next time my sister is tired, you have to help my sister massage her shoulders and don't excuse yourself. Sister Fan nodded, stood up and said to me with a smile. I hurriedly agreed, after all, it is not easy to talk about Sister Fan. That's all I can help you with. The opportunity has been given to you, and the rest of the road is up to you. I sat in Sister Fan's office and waited for more than half an hour, and she walked in from outside. Well, I'm still very happy with her. Xiao Yuan, my sister has already arranged her in the sales department, let her exercise there first. That girl is still quite okay. Sister Fan said to me. Thank you, sister. After saying thank you, I chatted with Sister Fan for a few more words and walked outside. After sitting in the car and waiting for a long time, Tao Yanyan walked out of China Resources with a happy face. Zhang Yuan, I was hired by China Resources. Tao Yanyan sat in the car and said to me very excitedly. I smiled at her and said, look, I'll say you can. In the future, you will work hard in China Resources, and I believe that you will definitely be reused in China Resources. Tao Yanyan looked at me and nodded at me with joy on her face. That's right, Yanyan. Qin Ranxue, a former classmate, held a class reunion this evening. Mu Xia invited me, are you going? I asked her as I remembered my class reunion tonight. I don't know why, when I talked about Mu Xia, Tao Yanyan's joyful eyes obviously dimmed a lot. She was silent for a moment and then said, I don't want to go, I don't like to be with them. I nodded, after all, they had laughed at her for her father being a murderer. Since she doesn't want to go, then I won't force her. After walking around with her for a while, I put her in a taxi. At this time, it was almost 6 o'clock, and Mu Xia was about to get off work. I drove to Haidong to pick her up from work and then go to the class reunion. I went to Haidong to pick up Mu Xia and drove towards the Luohua Hotel, because the class reunion organized by Qin Ranxue was held in Luohua. When I parked the car at the Luohua Hotel, I saw Qin Ranxue wearing a gorgeous short skirt at a glance. At this time, several former classmates were surrounding her and saying something. Mu Xia hurriedly got out of the car and walked towards Qin Ranxue. Qin Ranxue was very excited when she saw Mu Xia, and the two girls immediately held hands and talked and laughed. The surrounding classmates were also chatting and laughing around them. But when Qin Ranxue saw me, the smile on her face turned into a look of disdain. Why is he here? Who invited him? I don't know if I don't like him. Hearing Qin Ranxue's undisguised contempt, my brows furrowed tightly, and my expression was a little angry. She was kind to other people before, but when she saw me, she was contemptuous. Is this still an old classmate? Ranxue, Zhang Yuan was invited by me, he is my friend, don't say that. Mu Xia took Qin Ranxue's hand and immediately helped me speak. What is Xia, how can you be friends with someone like him? Qin Ranxue looked angry, and then said to me, did I tell you before that you shouldn't get close to our Xia? Do you really not know how dick you are? Hearing her dick one by one, I couldn't help it. But just as I was about to speak, Mu Xia said to Qin Ranxue unhappily, Ranxue, Zhang Yuan was invited by me. If you continue like this, then I won't be in this class reunion, and I'll go with him. Sia, you've changed, and now you're actually talking for this dick. Forget it, who made you my Chin Ranshua's best friend? Since she is your friend, then I will reluctantly regard him as a friend. Chin Ranshua said reluctantly. I'm also convinced. I want to say that I really don't need you to be friends with me so reluctantly. I really can't afford to climb Zhang Yuan. I didn't expect that after so many years, she would still be like this. Is the same as Qin Fei Gong, and it will never change. Mu Xia saw that I was unhappy. She hurriedly came over to comfort me, saying that Qin Ranshue is this kind of character, and she speaks without thinking about her brain, so I don't have to care about what she said before. I nodded to her flatly. I thought to myself what I had to do with her, and I didn't know her very well. After an interlude, all of us went into the Luohua Hotel. But there weren't many students coming, only a dozen people in total, and it was just a table. Most of the people didn't come. And these people will slowly disappear into the long river of memories of life with the passage of time. Mu Xia sat next to me, and when Qin Ranshue saw me sitting opposite her, she immediately stood up and spoke. But Mu Xia glared at her, and she had to sit down again. During the meal, all of them were toasting, but none of their classmates toasted me except Mu Xia. Maybe it's because all of them still look down on me and think I don't deserve to eat with them. I didn't pay much attention to this. After all, the reason why I came this time was just for Mu Xia's face. Not to mention, there are really some of them who are good mixed up. For example, Zhou Baogong, he now has opened a small company by himself, and his property is also around hundreds of thousands. It's the best mix of them all. And he also has an open secret, that is, he has always liked Qin Ranshue. When he was in school before, he confessed to Qin Ranshue in front of our class, but Qin Ranshue refused on the spot. Now that he is soaring, Qin Ranshue has also interacted more with him, and the two not only toast from time to time, but also talk and laugh. This really fulfills that sentence: if the woman you like doesn't care about you, it's not that you're not handsome enough, but just because you don't have money.